Jewish Channel's Week in Review. Financial scandal rocks one of the Jewish world's best-known charities. New York City mayoral frontrunners answer your questions. Israel-inspired cabaret, and more of the Jewish news that's changing your world right now in this episode of the Week in Review. Hello, and welcome to the Jewish Channel's Week in Review. I'm Stephen I. Weiss. For the first time in 20 years, New York City is set to elect a new mayor without a Jewish nominee on the general election ballot. The frontrunners to be the next mayor of New York City answer the questions on your mind in interviews with the Jewish Channel. We'll have the details of those in a moment. But first, a financial scandal has rocked the world of Jewish charities and could be the source of a much larger political flap. One of the most well-known and longest-serving professional leaders in the Jewish world was fired from a position helping the Jewish poor on Monday over what his organization is calling financial irregularities. William Rapfogel had been at the Metropolitan Council on Jewish Poverty for more than 2 decades, a career that came to a sudden halt amid these revelations. The Met Council, as it's often called, handles more than $100 million a year to serve those in need in New York City's Jewish community, where 1 in 5 Jews live below the poverty line. The organization funds soup kitchens, housing, and other safety net programs. Rapfogel, who received an annual salary of more than $340,000 and other benefits exceeding $75,000, was one of the highest-paid Jewish nonprofit executives in the country. But the allegations made against him, according to reports in leading New York City newspapers, include claims that he received kickbacks from an insurance provider to which the Met Council made inflated payments. The New York Daily News quoted an anonymous source saying Rapfogel had received, quote, 6 figures of cash from the insurance company, Century Coverage. Rapfogel issued a statement to the media through his lawyer, which read in part, "I deeply regret the mistakes I have made that led to my departure from the organization." Also wrapped up in the scandal are more than $100,000 in political donations going back more than a decade. The donations were made by Century Coverage employees, and it is being reported by multiple outlets that the donations had their ultimate source in the inflated payments made to the insurance company by the Met Council and Rapfogel. 4 candidates for mayor are among those who've received political donations associated with Century Coverage. 3 of those candidates have already said they will return the funds, while a 4th, former City Comptroller Bill Thompson, said he is still reviewing donations with possible ties to Century Coverage. The statements by these candidates speak to the public impression made by Rapfogel. City Council Speaker Christine Quinn, who is returning $25,000 of donations associated with Century Coverage, issued a statement through a spokesperson declaring Speaker Quinn is outraged and frankly stunned by the reports today related to Mr. Rapfogel's use of funding for the Metropolitan Council. Former Comptroller Thompson's spokesperson said, Bill Thompson is disappointed by Mr. Rapfogel's disregard for the law and the damage he has caused this charitable organization, which does important work for people and families in poverty. New York State Attorney General's office has declared Rapfogel's conduct is the subject of an ongoing criminal investigation. Moving on to news of the Jewish intersection with politics more broadly, leading candidates for New York City mayor have been coming to TJC's studios in recent days to discuss the key issues affecting the city and matters of concern to Jewish voters particularly. The 2 current frontrunners for the Democratic nomination, City Council Speaker Christine Quinn and former City Comptroller Bill Thompson, were here in recent days. The discussions range from topics of affordable housing and public schooling to specific issues like the circumcision controversy in the ultra-Orthodox community and a housing project being developed by a Satmar Hasidic organization. Here are some of the highlights from those interviews. What would be your greatest concern of what could be lost from the Bloomberg legacies?
I think it is less, not just Bloomberg. I think if we look at a period of years, even a little bit more than that, the thing that has helped to change the city the most in my lifetime has probably been the increase in public safety. New York City as a safe, big city. There's still some communities that aren't as safe as they need to be. Every neighborhood is entitled to public safety, and that's one of the things I want to focus on. I want to make sure that things like stop and frisk don't continue to be misused in New York City. But New York City is a safe, big city. We have to stay safe.
And further on stop and frisk, one of the surprising things, looking at the crosstabs, the polling across New York City, and the Jewish community specifically seems to be all about stop and frisk, that it's head and shoulders above everybody else in terms of approving of stop and frisk. But at the same time, I can't point to any polls, but anecdotally, the amount of confusion out there about what stop and frisk means.
I don't believe any New Yorker wants a fellow New Yorker stopped regularly by the police when there is no evidence that that fellow New Yorker is committing a crime. And there is no evidence that that level of intrusion is keeping us safe. And I say that because in the past 2 quarters, the number of stops have gone down. So has crime.
One issue that is a uniquely Jewish issue that has come up under the Bloomberg administration has been the health department's choice to enforce some kind of messaging regarding a practice called Metzitza B'Peh, a circumcision practice in the ultra-Orthodox community that the health department has been saying is connected to neonatal herpes infections. And the obvious question is, under your administration, would you be continuing that policy? Would you be changing that policy?
What I said, I mean, I think, and speaking to a number of leaders in communities across, in Jewish communities across the city of New York, the feeling there is that people never had the opportunity to sit down and have the conversation and present possible alternatives that would make sure that practices could still move forward, religious practices could still move forward, as well as children kept safe. And I think that that conversation was never had. I think that the community is still feeling angry because it was, or a very brief conversation, that they really weren't allowed to be engaged in that conversation. And I said I'd be willing to have that conversation, be willing to at least sit down and have that discussion. And there are a number of people who are anxious to be able to do that. I think that that's important, to be able to have that conversation and then see where we go from there.
The circumcision issue with that the mayor's health departments have made a lot of effort over the past 7-8 years to try to address. Will you be continuing the mayor's policies on that?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. No questions asked.
Correct.
All right. And with housing in general, whether it's for affordable housing, whether it's the homeless, an overarching issue is a general lack of supply. And what are some of the ways that you would hope to increase the supply of housing overall?
Well, one of the things we need to do is add city money into the equation. You know, we are lucky to get federal dollars for affordable housing, but that comes for a very prescribed income level for low-income folks. And we need to keep building that. Like, we'd keep the present plan of 40,000 units at that level going. But we hear so much from moderate and middle-income folks that they and their families can't find apartments that they can afford. That's why I would spend $300 million a year, every year for the next 10 years, from the city's capital budget to address this need. Since it's city money, we're going to have a lot of flexibility in how and where we spend it. Given where interest rates are, I would borrow half of that new, but the other half we've actually identified exactly where in the capital budget we can find it, create savings, or redirect it, and that's going to help us a lot.
Regarding housing, this is probably the number one issue of concern to the middle class part of New York, I mean, and certainly to the working class as well. That the affordability issue. How do you hope to tackle the affordability issue?
I have talked about building or preserving 120,000 units of housing over an 8-year period of time. 70,000 of those units are new. We have to build new housing. It is as simple as that. But I also think it's the things that the city of New York does. If you look at the assessments, which continue to go up, in spite of the fact, as I point out, in 2007, 2008, 2009, as valuation decreased, as we were in a recession and housing costs or housing value went down, the assessments still continue to go up. They're being artificially manipulated by the city of New York. That needs to end. Water rates over a period of time. I remember testifying in front of the water board, pointing out double-digit water increases, 12, 13, 14%. And you continue to stand up against those increases. My office, when I was comptroller, we proved you probably needed to increase it 3 or 4% to be able to maintain the system. The excess was being put in the general fund, another backdoor tax. The city of New York needs to stop that.
And there's an affordable housing effort called the Brooklyn Triangle. That was an effort to get more housing in areas near a specific part of Brooklyn that needed more affordable housing. One of the curiosities of the project is that it's a partnership between a Jewish organization, the UJO, which is a Satmar Hasidic organization, and another organization called Ridgewood Bushwick.
Yes.
And in the judge's most recent decision, the judge said basically, I don't understand why Ridgewood Bushwick is involved and that their involvement might be holding back the project. So have you ever thought, since that decision came down, of whether Ridgewood Bushwick should be involved in that project?
Ridgewood Bushwick and its affiliation with Vito Lopez, that affiliation has really put a tremendous speculation question, put a real pale, so to speak, over Ridgewood Bushwick, and I think it's raised a lot of questions about the organization and Vito Lopez's involvement in this project. Other projects have raised a lot of questions, and they're ones we're going to have to look at moving forward. And I wish, and hope he is not a member of the City Council.
You can see the full interviews with Christine Quinn, Bill Thompson, and also current City Comptroller John Liu in the interviews category on the Jewish Channel On Demand on cable. Keep up with us at the Jewish Channel in the coming weeks for more on these city elections. Moving on, Israeli jazz musician Anat Cohen has a new cabaret act, and Meredith Gansman has that story.
New York is having an Israeli cabaret moment, with Israel's jazz artist Anat Cohen debuting at 54 Below.
Que é pra acabar com esse negócio de você viver sem mim.
Broadway's cabaret club 54 Below plays host to some of the best musical acts in New York City. But an Israeli artist taking the stage is a first. Hailing from Tel Aviv, clarinetist and saxophonist Anat Cohen has been living in New York City since 1999. For Cohen, jazz is a family business. Her two brothers are also musicians, and they all play together as the Three Cohens. But what you will hear at 54 Below is Cohen's signature showroom music, or Brazilian jazz.
It has the elements of jazz, of interaction, of improvisation. It has the elements of samba, the groove, and the happiness. It has the elements of like this cry of like longing.
Despite growing up in the Middle East, Cohen has been heavily influenced by the sounds of South America.
Growing up in Israel, there were a lot of influences of Brazilian music in the music that I heard growing up. So later on, when I went to college, I studied at Berklee College of Music, and I met a bunch of Brazilian people there. And I started to play with them, and I said, wait a second, I feel really comfortable with this music. Something really hits home there.
To hear more from Anat Cohen, tune into the full broadcast version of the Week in Review.
Thank you, Meredith. That's all for this week. From all of us here at the Jewish Channel, be well. Cable. The Jewish Channel is available on cable. Time Warner Cable Channel 528, IO Optimum Channel 505, RCN Channel 268, Bright House Channel 330, Verizon Fios Channel 900, Cox Cable Channel 1, Frontier Communications, and on Comcast in the on-demand menu under Premium Channels. For more information, visit tjctv.com.